The 1985 Buick Wildcat Concept, the car you've definitely forgotten about. Cars of the 1980s often stand out as some of the most exaggerated and unapologetic when it comes to their styling. Most of you probably know about cars like the Ferrari Testarossa and Lamborghini Countach, which was actually conceived in the 1970s. Although these are some of the poster cars from that era, there were many other interesting designs that never made it to production. In 1985, Buick decided to show us what their interpretation of a mid-engine supercar would look like. This endeavor spawned the 1985 Buick Wildcat Concept, which was undeservingly forgotten, like many others. It debuted at the 1985 SEMA show. Buick was mostly known for making land yachts, but the Wildcat a more performance-oriented car. The main purpose of the mid-engine prototype was to showcase the brand's newly developed 3.8-liter V6 DOHC engine, co-developed with McLaren. To be more specific, we are talking McLaren Racing from Livonia, Michigan, and not the British supercar manufacturer, a common misconception made by many. The car featured a canopy-style cockpit, which would tilt up, allowing the occupants to enter. The Wildcat had a very rounded front end and from some angles looked like the Dodge M4's Turbo Interceptor. The most distinctive feature was the low flat rear end, which accommodates the exposed V6 engine. In fact, from some angles, one could mistake the rear end for the front and vice versa. There were two versions of the V6 engine. The 3.8-liter V6 engine that was developed in cooperation with McLaren Racing was first put to work in the Buick Grand National. Apparently, the Wildcat had both a normally aspirated and a turbocharged version of the 3.8-liter V6. The first one developed 230 horsepower, 172 kilowatts, at 6,000 RPM and 245 pound-feet, 332 Newton-meters, at 4,000 RPM. While the second version brought these figures up to 360 horsepower, 269 kilowatts, at 7,000 RPM and 398 pound-feet, 540 Newton-meters, at 5,000 RPM. The car also featured all-wheel drive and a 4-speed automatic transmission. Among the engine's features were a double overhead cam design, DOHC, 4 valves per cylinder, 24 valves, a 9.1:1 compression ratio, and an electronically programmable sequential fuel injection. It is believed that the normally aspirated car was a show car and had a speed muzzle, which allowed it to reach only 70 miles per hour, 112 kilometers per hour, and reach 60 miles per hour, 97 kilometers per hour, in a mediocre 8.4 seconds. It also had a very low rev limiter preventing it from using its upper RPM range. Some sources theorize that, unrestricted, the normally aspirated version actually had a 0 to 60 miles per hour time of 5.9 seconds and a top speed of 157 miles per hour, 253 kilometers per hour. The turbocharged car, however, was able to reach 60 miles per hour from a standstill in around 4.4 seconds, while topping out at 180 miles per hour, 290 kilometers per hour. Depending on the source, power was split 33 to 67 or 35 to 65 between the two axles. It featured extensive use of lightweight materials. In 1985, carbon fiber still wasn't as mainstream in the supercar world as it is today. Nevertheless, the Wildcat featured a carbon fiber composite body. This meant that despite all the new tech it had, the concept tipped the scales at just 2,910 pounds, 1,320 kilograms. Jet fighter-inspired cockpit. The interior was very futuristic, featuring a display on the center console that gives you various info, such as G-force, torque, oil pressure, and even a compass, among other things. The biggest quirk of the interior is the spokeless steering wheel, similar to that of the 1971 Maserati Boomerang and 1969 Holden Hurricane concepts. Such design allows for an unobstructed view of the digital instrument cluster. At the same time, much of the information, like speed, engine RPMs, and gear, is also shown on the heads-up display on the canopy. The sleek design allowed it to be very low and aerodynamic. The 1985 Buick Wildcat Concept had a height of 1,110 mm, 43.7 inches. At the same time, the mid-engine car had a wheelbase of 2,591 mm, 102 inches, with a front and rear track of 1,511 mm. 59.9 inches. The overall length was 4,387 mm. 172.2 inches. And the overall width 1,836 mm. 72.3 inches. The 1985 Wildcat would have had no trouble cutting through the air, as it had a drag coefficient of 0.28. The name Wildcat was used before, and after. It's not the first time Buick named a car the Wildcat. There were 3 other concepts from 1953, 1954, and 1955 that also never made it to production. In 1962, the name was used for a full-size coupe, from Buick's lineup, which was produced until 1970. The Wildcat was actually a trim level of the Buick LeSabre, featuring different trim and emblems, unique to the Wildcat. The base engine was a 401 cubic inch, 6.6-liter, 6,571 cc, V8 nailhead, rated at 325 horsepower, 239 kilowatts, at 4,600 RPM. The name was used again in 1997, for the Buick Riviera Wildcat.
If you liked this video, please share your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to hit the subscribe button.